Well, hello everyone. And actually, this is going to be the last week of 6 devotionals a week. We're actually going to drop next week to 5, at least that's the plan. But the Saturday, what we're wanting to do is to build in a time of reflection. Maybe a prayer exercise or looking back over the devotionals of that week and just make it a little more reflective, just a little different. Got some ideas, or if you're doing this and go, we liked it the old way, or what about this? Love to hear your ideas. David, Mike, and I are more than welcome to love to hear them. Anyways, I'm coming to you, yes, from, we call it the Arsenal. You can see kind of the weapons in the background. This was, it is Devin's room, but it's the quiet place right now. So let's get at it. 2 Samuel chapter 13. Now, we started to see from David and Bathsheba, there was this word that dark times were going to come for David. There's going to be some difficulties. And oh boy, this week, are we going to get difficulty after difficulty for David? Now, to understand this chapter, there's some things that are a little bit odd to us, or we're not sure why certain things might be said. So again, some background and kind of parental advisory warning to some of the content and topic of this chapter. Who said the Bible was, Bible is definitely not a G-rated book. So we need to understand some of the Mosaic law regarding incest and rape. Incest, unlawful. Like there's just no kind of ifs, ands, or buts about that. Yet, what intersects in this chapter is when rape occurred, the rapist was required to marry the victim. Now, that sounds horrific, I think, to our sensibilities. Like, why would you be enforcing, a woman to be then married to the person who raped and raped her and in his household for the rest of her life? That's not exactly what the law required. The law required that the rapist marry the woman, but not that she would live with him. It was that she now had status and he was required to care for her for the rest of his life. So it was not intended to kind of just continue to re-victimize the victim. It actually was a law to protect the victim, because culturally, socially, there was a lot of stigma attached to a woman who had been raped, even though, again, not anything to do with her, but to make sure that she would be protected. At minimum, the perpetrator was to care for his victim for the rest of his life or her life, whoever came first. The law actually disempowered the rapist and provided care for the victim. So again, the way it sounds very harsh, very kind of, what do you mean she has to marry him? Again, different culture, need to understand the practice before we just rush to judgment over what the words mean. So in this chapter specifically, this was just all background. Whew, we're already almost 4 minutes in. One of David's sons, his oldest son, the heir to the throne, grew to lust after his half-sister, who's called a beautiful woman. Her name is Tamar. He gets advice on how to be close to her, how to spend time with her. Again, as a daughter of the king, as we see, she was a virgin. She would have been protected. She would have been kind of cloistered to some degree. So just kind of can't just go and, hey, sis, do you want to go, down and get a coffee or just hang out? That's not how the culture worked. So he's like, how do I get close to her? How do I get to be with her? How do I get to spend time with her? And a friend goes, well, pretend to be sick. Ask, if your dad comes, go like, hey, would it be okay if my, sister would come and just kind of feed me some soup? She just kind of help take care of me, right? Seems kind of innocent. Even maybe the friend didn't fully expect what Amnon's actions would be. So anyway, so Tamar comes to care for her illegitimately ill brother, and he demands sex from her, to which she responds, hey, like, why don't you ask, our father for me to become your wife. Now, again, that's against the law. So again, a lot of scholars kind of go, she's playing for time. She's trying to get out of the situation because, I mean, physically she's going to be overpowered, at least absolutely most likely. And we see that's what does happen. So she's kind of like, hey, you can have what you want, but in a way she's kind of like dangling the carrot so that she can get out and get safe. And so that's where this kind of coming is like, wait a second, that can't happen by the law. She knows that. At least that's the understanding here. She's trying to get out. And again, and I mean, on multiple levels, rape just devastates a victim. It doesn't stop the rape from happening. The same verbs in Genesis 34 of the rape of Dinah is used here. So this is a violent act. In Genesis 34, what happens there is that the perpetrator becomes even more enraptured with his victim. Here it's the opposite. Amnon becomes, now he's like, he despises her. In fact, blames her for his lust, his issue. And again, historically, that is a dynamic that isn't just male, female. I think there's a human dynamic, and it shows in different ways where sometimes we blame others for our sins and our character flaws. It's like, I get angry. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be so angry. No, you're angry. And whether it's a legitimate reason or not, you got to own your anger. We need to own our own issues, our own character flaws and temptations and proclivities towards sin and rebellion, against being unloving towards God and others. Anyways, Amnon here puts her out of his house, further violating the law, right? He's not providing for the victim. He's not following that part. And he basically calls her trash. The word here is like, get this thing, not even as a person, not woman, get this thing out of my house. And what Tamar does is she rips her outer garment, the one that kind of was like she was a virgin. She was kind of sexually, inexperienced. And again, that was, high value from a political standpoint for the king. And so she tears this garment. It's kind of like this public, like, I've been raped. Here she's advocating for herself. And her dad, David, does, insert sound of crickets, nothing. Her brother, Absalom, who's third in birth order, but probably here second. There's never any mention apart from the second oldest being born, and there's never any other mention. So a lot of scholars kind of go, maybe died earlier. So Amnon's first in line, Absalom's second in line for the throne. Absalom, Tamar's brother, takes her in and starts plotting his revenge. And we're going to see Absalom. Revenge is a dish best served cold. This guy is a planner. This guy waits for his opportunity. I got to admit, there's a little piece of it that at least I respect, his capacity for patience. How he uses that is horrific. The capacity is interesting. Anyway, so he starts plotting revenge against his older brother. Now, again, his older brother's heir to the throne. Likely he's going to have a bodyguard around him. You can't just get access to this guy. David, again, does nothing. Some suggest to me it's because he knows what he did to Bathsheba, so he's no better in some regards, though at least he took her in and provided for Bathsheba for the rest of her life, and actually looked to have a relationship with her, even though it started very poorly under poor dynamics. 2 years later, we see 2 years later, Absalom takes revenge on Amnon. And again, it's kind of, was it revenge? Was it also paving the way for him to be the next in line? Maybe it's a bit of both. Text isn't exactly clear on that. But Absalom takes revenge, has his brother killed, and runs because he knows now I'm going to be in trouble for what I've done. He runs to his grandfather's in a foreign land and is there for 3 years until the text says that David's kind of longing for justice lessened. Now, and his kind of heart was kind of like there's this longing for Absalom. This isn't David kind of going, oh, I wish I'd have my son back. What the text here, that the Hebrew is the idea that David's thirst for vengeance, David's like kind of his willingness for patience to plot his own revenge in action, that had kind of been spent. And he's now in a place where he didn't want relationship with Absalom, but wasn't out and out looking to punish Absalom either. So again, sorry, this one went a lot longer. There's lots of stuff in this chapter and stuff I didn't even cover. So again, if there's any questions on stuff, let me know. This story, again, disturbing lessons about sexual violence. It just hurts. It harms people. There's nothing good that comes from it. And unfortunately, given recent revelations in various segments of the evangelical church, we haven't done a great job at being as firm and is acting against perpetrators of this as we ought. So just a reminder for us that there should be no tolerance for this kind of activity and behavior. It is wrong. It is sin in all forms and regards. The other thing about this chapter I want to make mention real quick is just simply this: sin has consequences. What David did with Bathsheba, there's a piece here of, almost in a sense you could go planting seed. Why did Amnon even think that this was okay? I mean, I'm sure he didn't think it was okay, but again, there's a part where he was still willing to do that. He was still willing to cross the line. And in a way, what his dad did with one of his mother-in-laws, I don't know how that one works, stepmoms. What is it when there's multiple wives? Somebody can tell me what the answer is. He knows the story. I'm sure he would have heard the story of his father and Bathsheba and what happened there. Plant some seeds. What goes around comes around. This is not karma. This is the biblical principle of you reap what you sow. David sowed sexual violence and betrayal in his own life, and it's going to now affect his family. Our sin has consequences. It's why we need to seek after God and allow him to root it out. Now, this has gone way too long. I promise the rest will be shorter. Any questions, let me know. If you got through all this, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And today, would you know his peace? God bless.